whenever I put my slides together for a youth group, when I think I've got what I want to do for the theme for the night, I always go see Miss Julie. And I say, Miss Julie, would you take a look at my slide and see if this all looks good, if it takes, since how's it all fit together and all of that. And so I took my slide over to Miss Julie and I asked her that question. And do you know what her observation was? Her observation is, well, those two kids could never lift that girder.
There's no way. It's a steel beam.
Yeah. Those two kids could lift.
Pretty short steel beam though, I mean.
And how do you know? Maybe it's really not steel. Maybe it's an aluminum.
Maybe it's, yeah. Maybe.
Not with the way he's carried it, though. He's carried it a little.
Then why do you need knee pads if it's not that heavy?
Because he's got a skateboard off to the side, you don't see. Okay. Anyway.
Rocket
don't
power.
Laugh at me. Laugh with me.
See, he could be a rocket power kid. He does kind of look like a rocket power kid.
You guys don't even remember rocket power.
I do.
Well,
I
used
love
to
rocket power.
Sam's like almost 30.
What?
You do him dirty like that.
Sam almost like 30.
Yeah.
That's true.
You are old.
Thanks. Little
Rocket
sister.
power is an old Nickelodeon cartoon. Power.
Da, 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 da,
We
da.
like rocket power in our house.
Yeah.
Kieran's not almost 30 and he liked rocket power.
Yeah.
I was almost not allowed to watch it.
What?
Mom and Dad were weird. Halloween was the
Well, that
devil's.
explains a lot.
Halloween was the devil's birthday. Couldn't watch Buffy because of witchcraft.
Oh my gosh.
Couldn't
See, I
watch,
couldn't watch Kiss.
Couldn't watch Harry Potter.
So anyway, we're having a
WWF.
lesson tonight.
Kiss.
I
the
didn't
band.
watch. Yeah.
What's going on?
I don't know if I want to watch WWF.
Pictures of more kids carrying.
Cody and I did.
Yeah, I got some over in China doing it for me, and I got some in India that I did.
We weren't allowed to watch
You know, just
WWF,
to
but
exploit
then
all
my
the
dad
children.
took him to one in person.
So,
You're
Dave and
jealous.
I are at work. They look like they're hard at work, especially since they're lifting that beam that would be impossible for them to lift anyway.
Unless they're captured up at the Holy Spirit, there's no possible way.
They're working under the strength of the Lord.
There you go.
That's it. They're caught up in the Spirit and He has empowered them like Samson. So who loves working? Who loves to work? Do work? Anyone?
I like doing work if it's what I want to do.
Why do you like doing work if it's what I want to do?
Because I don't want to do your work. I want to do what I want to do.
Is that what you do when you're at work? You do what you want to do and not what I want you to do?
No, what I'm doing work, I'm doing what I want to do.
Oh, okay. Okay. Who likes to work?
I do because I get a paycheck.
Someone else? Who else likes to work? Anyone else like to work? Do you like to work, Hannah?
No.
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 Why not?
Because I don't want to. I'm too lazy.
You're too lazy
Let's
to
be
work.
real.
All right.
That's pretty.
Anthony can answer.
And now we have this for all posterity to hear.
I would tell them. Everyone knows I'm lazy.
I'll play it back for you guys.
Oh, he'll tell you I'm lazy.
Okay, all right. So Hannah doesn't like to work because she is a self-proclaimed.
But, okay,
slut.
so there's work, but then if it was working on your golf,
Yeah. Then
there's a
Because
difference.
I just came from hitting golf balls.
Ah.
See?
So I'm good at working.
No, you're getting ahead of me, my question. So hold that thought. Who else? Anyone like to work? Is there anyone that likes to work?
It's not horrible. I mean, they do pay me good, so.
Okay, so you like it because you get what you consider to be fair remuneration. That's payment for everyone else that speaks the English language, besides me. Because they pay you a decent wage, you feel all right about doing the work. Sarah, how you feel about working?
Well, I probably want to do something else.
You probably want, you would probably say it again for me.
I probably want to do something else besides work.
You would probably want to do something else besides work. Okay, okay. So, apparently nobody likes working.
I do
It
enjoy
depends on
work.
the work, Paul.
See?
This is
Well,
a
how
very
about-
nuanced question.
Yeah, well, then give me a very nuanced answer.
I don't have a different answer. Miss Julie hit the nail on the head the first time.
See?
All right.
If you're doing what you like to do, it's really not work.
So, Hannah, you
Yes,
started to get ahead of us there. So what's your favorite thing to work on? How's that?
Golf.
That's your, you like to work on golf?
Yes.
Are you sure that's not playing?
No, it's working.
Why do you consider that work?
Because I have to put a lot of hours in it. I have to go to lessons. I have to play. I have to do like different sets, like hitting a lot of golf balls and
Okay.
putting. It's so much
It's
stuff.
true.
So there's a lot into it, and it is work then,
Yeah, it's
But-
not just like playing.
but you enjoy it.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
Anyone else? What is it that you really like working on? What is it you do like to work on?
Like Hannah bowling.
What?
Like Hannah, only bowling.
Only bowling.
Only bowl, what hand of it bowling? Again, that seems an awful lot like play.
No.
That's how play?
No,
No.
no PB.
I mean, I'm just asking.
You work really hard on your Candy Crush or your SimCity thing.
I don't do SimCity, and I don't do Candy Crush very often anymore.
Well, whatever game is on your phone, you are awfully devoted to it.
I haven't done Candy
I
Crush.
like working. I like working at showing everyone the greatness that is Calvinism.
And
You were
we've been
preordained to
praying for
do
you
it.
about that. We've been praying for you about that. So, in fact, if you like, you could go down to the altar, you could willfully surrender your soul to Christ.
Can't. If I do, then it was predestined for me to do.
Whatever.
I don't have a choice.
So anyway, it's not nice to have a debate over a false sense of Calvinism and the righteousness of Wesleyan. What do you enjoy working at, right? The favorite thing you like working on. I enjoy doing things like, I like putting together lessons and sermons. I don't know if that sounds like work to you, but it is. In fact, when I get ready for a lesson on Wednesday night lesson, how long do you think it takes me to get ready?
A long time.
How long do you think? Seriously,
Few days.
Huh?
A few days.
A few days.
The week. The whole week.
A whole week. Just for my lesson tonight.
Yes. A day.
So are you just making big guesses just to make a guess?
Yeah.
You want this a few days, a week late.
I thought so. Typically, to get ready for a lesson, probably at least 3 hours.
You're kidding.
What do you mean I'm kidding?
You're being less sarcastic.
I was gonna say, someone is very sassy tonight.
I like Hannah even more tonight.
Now I wish you still had that gangrene finger. Gee whiz. No, at least about 3 hours. When I get the hard part lesson that I got, and you figure out topics that I want to kind of hold to, and then put the lesson, find my scriptures and build the lesson around. So it takes me at least probably 3 hours, and I do split that over a couple different nights, but I usually spend doing that. So it takes time to do that. It takes time to put a sermon together. If I'm putting a sermon together, it could be more like 4 or 5 hours just for the sermon, at the minimum probably, depending upon how easily it's flowing. Sometimes you got to work hard, and sometimes the Lord just goes boom, it just flows right out.
It's the Holy Spirit, dude, I'm telling you.
That's right. And I enjoy that. That's one of the things I really like to do. So what's the hardest work you've ever done? Hardest work?
Teaching chemistry.
Did you sweat in copious buckets?
Yes. This week is hard because I gotta act like the smart one. And I'm not saying that I understand it either.
And that's hard work. Acting like the smart one is hard work. Yeah. What's the hardest work you've ever done? Miss Sarah says teaching chemistry. Hardest work.
When I was on the newspaper staff for my school my senior year, and we had to put the like senior edition together, which has like the ads and everybody's senior quotes, and we like were working on that for like a couple weeks, I think.
Yeah.
But then like something happened and we had to like restart like at almost the last second. And then not everybody, we already had like a small staff to begin with, but then like not everybody stayed after school. So we were like rushing to get things done down in like a computer lab. I didn't leave till midnight. I was like one of the last people to leave. That was rough. That was stressful, and it was really hard work because there was so much stuff that we had to do, and I'm not exactly the best at computers and stuff like that. So
there's a lot of coordination in that too.
yeah, and there wasn't many of us to do it, and there was a lot to do in a small amount of time.
Yeah, yeah. So putting that addition together on a small staff and a short fuse, a lot of pressure in doing that. Anyone else? What's the hardest thing you've ever done? The hardest work you've ever done? You've never done anything like that.
I don't know, I like putting in my patios up on top of my list.
Putting in your patio?
Yeah, 15,000 pounds worth of pavers is a lot of brick moving.
I don't know if this is the hardest work I've ever done, but I will say, many moons back, before we came to Southview, we would take a youth group down to South Alabama to a place called CFAT, Servants in Faith and Technology. It was kind of a mission-oriented place. And they had on their site a simulated third world village. And we spent several of our days in the third world village, and we ate like we were in a third world, but we would eat and live like we would in a third world village, but we would, in the morning, we would work like you were in a third world village. And the work was Alabama summer, hot sun, humid work, and because we were eating a lot less, and I was not sleeping well because we had these hammocks on, I just could not get comfortable in the hammocks. It felt like maybe the hardest work I ever did, just because I wasn't sleeping and I wasn't eating as much as I usually do, so that really seemed like hard work to me. Though it may not be the hardest work, it certainly was memorable. Hard work. What's the best thing about working hard?
The reward.
The reward. You get rewarded for working hard?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of reward do you receive?
Sometimes I get money.
Money. So there's the whole remuneration thing again?
I got one.
Yeah.
Sometimes like if my like work, if I'm like studying for like a test or a quiz, my reward could be like getting a good grade.
Okay, so good grade. Yeah, so you do get some gratification in that, right? So you get it. A+, Hannah always gets an A+, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every time. So getting a grade, especially if you get a better grade than you ever find more than that's very rewarding, right? Someone else, what is the best thing about working hard?
It feels good after you put in all that work, like to see like the final like result.
Yeah.
Like, whenever I do my laundry, I also like clean my room and I'll like vacuum and do all that stuff. So at the end of the day, when I have clean clothes and a clean room, and after all that, it just feels good to have like a clean space, and after all the hard work,
Feels
you put in, it feels
satisfying
good.
that you accomplished something.
Yeah.
Satisfaction that you may want to talk to T and she may give. Anyway, so what's the worst part about hard work?
The work.
The sweat. Sometimes you stink.
Sweat. What did you say, Hannah?
I said the work itself.
The work. The worst part about hard work is the work. Frankly, that might be true. The hardest part is the work itself. Although some people would tell you, for them, that the work itself may actually be the best part.
Sometimes I think it's who you're with. Like if you're with somebody who is just not pulling their weight, or they're just standing there whining and complaining, and you just want to say, do you love Jesus? And then take him out. Let's go down to the river and get baptized.
One of the Big Ten there. So sometimes the worst part about hard work is that you're pulling your weight, but the other guy's not doing what he ought to be doing.
Or it's either that or they're critiquing everything everybody else is doing, like they're the expert. And
They like to be the supervisor rather than
yes,
one of the team.
yes.
Yeah, that can be annoying, that can be annoying. Do you ever feel like the work will never come to an end?
That's what I was gonna say too. It's like when you become aware of the time and you feel like you've been working forever, then you check the time and you have like 9 hours left.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
And even though when you come to the end of the day of hard work, does it feel like even at the end of the day, you know, oh, I'm gonna be back here in 8 hours again?
No, mine is, oh, now I gotta do laundry. Oh, now I gotta cook dinner for my family.
So there's another job to do,
Oh,
another job to do, and another, yeah, okay, so it doesn't an hour. What does that feel like when it just feels like the work's never gonna end?
You're a woman.
You know what, I'm pretty sure I haven't felt that way. Miss Sarah, what's it feel like to you when you just seem like the work's never gonna end?
I'm overwhelmed, so I just want, like, to go to bed, cause it's like, I'll just go to sleep and forget about it for a while, but.
Can be overwhelming, yeah, it can be really overwhelming, it can be discouraging too, because it just seems like, I can just give all I got to give, and it's still never ending, still never gonna end. Work is a pretty curious thing, I think. The fact is, if anything is going to get accomplished, though, it's going to require that somebody does something about it, right? So if anything is going to get accomplished, someone's got to do the work, right? From your underwear, right? All the way up to big things, like having a house to live in, or a bed to sleep in, or that phone that you're broadcasting your cell phone 24 hours a day through all varieties of social media. Someone worked for all of that. Whether you mean the person that earned the money to buy the things, or you mean the people who actually worked to create and make. Do you ever think about the lady that makes your underwear?
No.
Well, there's some lady or some guy who helped make your underwear, and that's their job, right? Somebody had to work, right? Yeah, and then you think about, someone worked to develop and to create that phone, right? Manufacture and all the design, lots of work went into that, and then, of course, your mom and dad pay the phone bill. You don't pay the phone bill right now. Yeah, so your mom and dad pay the phone bill, right? Yes, so someone along the way, no matter what it is, you probably can't think of something or anything in this life that you didn't have to do some kind of work to accomplish it, or someone else did it for you to be able to have it. So everywhere you turn in the Bible, God is asking people left and right to do all kinds of different things, right? He asks them all day long, all kinds of different things he wants people to do for the kingdom. And again, when he asks, usually hard work is required, right? Think about the story of Gideon, right? Gideon had to get that army together. How many rounds did he have to go through to whittle it down to 300? And then they actually had to go into battle, right? So lots of work required in that for Gideon. In every story you could probably name, any event, there was a lot of work, a lot of effort that went into that. So hard work's required. Here's the thing, though. God's got some very specific things to say about work, about how it should happen, and when it should happen, okay? So, let me give you a passage that you might have heard before. Are you ready? Here comes out of Exodus, chapter 20, verse 8 through 10a. Now, this is going to be the quiz because I'm not reading the whole story. I want to see if you remember the part I'm not reading here. Remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. What is that?
The Sabbath day.
No, what is that verse? What's it called? It's one of what?
The Ten Commandments.
It's one of the 10, isn't it? You have 6 days, we'll go further right now. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work. But the 7th day is a Sabbath day of rest dedicated to the Lord your God. You guys heard that one before? Everyone's heard that one before, right? Everyone knows that one. Tegan, put your phone away. Tegan, put that phone away. So, let me ask you a question, not a trick question. What is the Sabbath?
A day of rest.
That does seem to be what God indicates here, right? It should be a day of rest, but what is the Sabbath? Pretty strongly implied in the passage here. Anyone know what the Sabbath is? What day is the Sabbath?
Well, for some it's Sunday, some it's
As
Saturday.
Christians, now, as Christians and people that attend this church, what day is the Sabbath?
Sunday.
Sunday.
Sunday is, we call that the Sabbath. What is the Sabbath?
It's a day dedicated to the Lord.
It's a day dedicated to the Lord. There we go. Very simple. Not a trick question at all. There we go. Thank you, man. Thanks for coming back again. It's a day that's dedicated. And do you know why we observe the Sabbath on Sunday? Anyone? Why do you have the Sabbath on Sunday?
The day of resurrection.
Ah, that is it. Christians, for the most part, observe the Sabbath on a Sunday because it is the day that Christ rose from the dead. And so each Sabbath day is supposed to be like a tiny memorial of Christ's resurrection. And so we honor the Sabbath on Sunday as Christians. That's why we do it on Sunday. And it's why Jews have their Sabbath on Saturday, because Jesus was in the ground during their Sabbath, right? And the Sabbath is observed on Saturday for the Jewish community and a small handful of Christians, because it is the 7th day of the week. It is the day on which, when Genesis says he rested, that is the actual day that Genesis actually refers to, Saturday. So there's the difference. So what are God's instructions about how we are to observe the Sabbath? That's the quiz. That's the quiz. Because he doesn't say all of it here. He tells us more after what we've got here. But the Sabbath day is a Sabbath day of rest dedicated to the Lord your God. You have 6 days to do your ordinary work, right? So, what are God's instructions about the Sabbath? About how we should observe the Sabbath? If you want a hint, and you've got your handy-dandy Bible app on your phone, you might scroll over to Exodus 20 and read the rest of verse 10.
Guess I'll
Do, 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 do. Anyone remember? What is it? What did God say about how we are to observe the Sabbath? See, I'm making you work tonight. I'll make you work.
It's a callback.
Well, I thought you found it. I was looking at.
It's Exodus 20, chapter 10. There's nothing hard about finding it. Or chapter 20,
You
verse
shall
10.
not do any work.
Is that all it says?
Well, it says a lot of people that shouldn't do any work.
That's
That's the exact words. A lot of people shouldn't do any work. That's what the Bible says.
This
Either
includes you,
or
your
son,
sons, your
daughter.
daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, and any foreigners living among you.
Your whole household.
What should you do?
Nope.
Rest.
Right.
No work. Right?
Holy.
No work. That's what he says, right? God's instructions about working on the Sabbath, they seem pretty non-negotiable here, don't they? Right? He says, no work. No work. How many of you know someone that works on the Sabbath? We all do. Every one of us. We know people. That is correct. That is correct. Miss Erica, Sundays all the time as a nurse, right? So, question to ask, I'm not going to give an answer to at the moment, but so does that mean she's sinning because she's working on Sunday? Does that mean, no, I'm not going to answer that question yet. I'm not going to go there just yet. Why don't you think people make such a big deal about working on Sunday these days? Because let's admit it, I'm going to tell you, when I was a kid, still were people who worked on Sunday, but it was a whole lot less people who worked on Sunday than do today. And when my parents were kids, there weren't many people working on Sunday at all. So,
People in the hospital and the fire department.
I mean, it was like people of absolute necessity worked Sunday.
It's more normalized.
In fact, I don't know if you remember when Macy's was Lazarus. When I was very young, the Lazarus store, which was owned by a Jewish family, that store would be closed on Saturdays. A major department store in the Midwest, and it was closed on Saturdays. Just like Chick-fil-A is closed on Sundays.
Closed on Sundays.
So, why do you think people don't make such a big deal about it these days?
Because we're not focused on God.
Because what?
We're not focused on God.
Because we're not, you mean us?
People in general.
People in general aren't, people as a country, maybe not, we're just not focused on God the way that people.
There's also a lot of profit to be made on a 7-day. than a 6-day week.
You can make a lot more profit in 7 days than in 6 days. That's true. I think that's pretty true. So lots of companies, they know that if they're closed on that 7th day, they're going to lose some big bucks, they think. And that may be true. So God's instructions are pretty clear, right? Seems pretty non-negotiable. And it's pretty clear that these days, most people just don't make it a real big ordeal about working on the Sabbath, right? So would it surprise you to be reminded that Jesus himself worked on the Sabbath? Believe me? You should. I mean, there's a couple different instances in the New Testament where it's pretty clear that he was doing it. In fact, guess what we're going to look at? Another one of them. In John chapter 5, now it's all up here, but we're going to step through this a little bit at a time. In John chapter 5, verses 16 through 20, this is just part of the story. So you probably better open up your Bible app to John chapter 5, because you might want to look in other places in the chapter here in a bit. So, we're just going to start reading here. In verse 16 it says, so the Jewish leaders began harassing Jesus for breaking the Sabbath rules. So what's the Sabbath rules? We just looked at it.
Rest.
Rest. No work, right? So they were harassing Jesus for working on the Sabbath. Do you remember what Jesus did that got him in such hot water for working on the Sabbath? Do you remember? Or do you want to look above there and see maybe what happened in the verses just before that? Anyone remember?
Is that the healing or the eating?
What?
Is that the healing or the eating?
No, I think we
Or harvesting.
eat. You're not allowed to prepare food. You
Right,
can eat
or
on the Sabbath.
harvesting,
You just
whatever
can't
he
prepare
did,
it.
No, gathering grain.
It was that was preparing the food.
Yeah.
Healing. It was the healing.
He did the healing, and something else he did too.
I don't remember.
Something he told someone.
Oh, he told someone to work on the Sabbath.
He gave direct instructions. So he healed a man who was lame, right? And he said to him, get up, take up your bed, and walk. In fact, there were specific rules according to the leaders of the Jewish people that you should not do healing, and you should not carry your bed, because bed's not like what we sleep in back then, on the Sabbath. It should not be done. And Jesus did both. He healed the guy, and he told him to pick his bed up and carry it away. And so they were harassing him. He healed the guy, and then he said, pick up that bed and walk. He instructed him specifically to work. Do you think Jesus was unaware of the rules? No, he definitely was not unaware of the rules, right? He was a Jewish
aware.
guy. He was an adult. He knew what the flavor of the day was, and he knew what was going on. So he knew exactly what he was doing when he told that guy to get up, and he healed him. Listen to what Jesus said in reply in verse 17. He said, but Jesus replied, my Father is always working, and so am I. What is the difference between working and working? Yeah, you understand what I'm asking?
I think there are some things that you have, like if you're choosing to do your job, like to do a certain job on Sunday, when it really isn't necessary, that's one way of working. But then there are times when, like, our family eats on Sunday, so the food doesn't magically make itself.
Right.
So,
Why don't you stay up and make my food and make your food?
because it's not something I think I'm supposed to do.
I give them no problem.
You can go right ahead, Pee-Pee. So there are things that you do that are not necessarily like your work, but there are things that you do because that's what needs to be done.
Okay.
So,
So what was the difference between what Jesus was doing? Between work and work?
He's like spreading God's word and he's like healing people, and like the other people they're working more for profit and just for their own good.
So you say he was spreading God's word and he was healing. So he was doing the work
For
of
others.
for other,
ministry for other people, right?
Mhm.
He was doing the work of ministry for other people. And that is the difference. That really is the difference. Jesus was doing something that this man needed in the moment. And he knew it was the right thing in the right situation at the right time to do. He wasn't doing it for notoriety. He wasn't doing it to line his pocket with money. He wasn't doing it for any of those reasons. He healed this man because the man needed help. And now that the guy could walk, it made perfect sense for him not to have to lay around in public anymore, but to be able to finally go home. So that's what he told him to do. Go home. Get back home. Go where you can be at rest really with yourself. This is what was going on with Jesus. What does that say when we think about that situation? What does that say about us working on the Sabbath? So we see what Jesus did. We begin to understand maybe why he did it. What does that say about us working on the Sabbath?
Like it's okay to work if we're like helping others and we're doing it for the benefit of them, and like doing more of what Jesus did.
Doing more what Jesus. So it wasn't just to do something nice for someone else. It was for that person. It was also for God, the kingdom of heaven, to glorify God, right? That's what was ultimately accomplished, was that this guy received help, but in the receiving of the help, God was glorified, wasn't he? And the kingdom was built up. It hacked off some other guys that thought that Jesus was just being a show-off.
yes, but isn't it kind of like they were harassing him? So they were being hypocrites in and of themselves
It
because,
seems that kind of
Yes.
seems that way. They got all flustered and worked up over, well, something that should not have been worked up over. So here is what happens next. So the Jewish leaders, are you ready for this? Listen, the Jewish leaders in verse 18 tried all the harder to find a way to kill him on the Sabbath. For he not only broke the Sabbath, you here's the bonus. He called God his Father, thereby making himself equal with God. Why do you think these guys were so angry? I mean, that's pretty extreme, don't you think? They were so angry, they didn't just harass him, they were so angry that it motivated them to double their efforts to try and get him killed. Why do you think they were that upset?
He was going against what they were saying.
He was, I don't know, so it wasn't about God, was it then? It was about
Their power.
them. He was going against what they were. He was an embarrassment to them. He was a rebel to them. Not to God, but to them he was a rebel. Right? He called into question their authority. He made them look like fools. And, it was embarrassing probably for them as well, as Jesus performed this work and then said, hey, God's always working, so I'm going to be like God and I'm going to be working. In fact, I'm not just going to be like God. I'm like God himself. I am God. He's my Father, and I'm on the same level as God is. And so that's pretty embarrassing. It steals a lot of power from those guys. We're going to go on here. I want to make sure I didn't skip something here. Sorry. Did I skip it? No. Okay. So, Jesus explained, verse 19, I tell you the truth. The Son can do nothing by himself. He does only what he sees the Father doing. Whatever the Father does, the Son also does. For the Father loves the Son and shows him everything he is doing. In fact, the Father will show him how to do even greater works than healing this man. Then you will be truly astonished. So, how do we know that he wants us to follow his example? How do we know that Jesus here really is telling us to follow his example? He says it pretty clearly. Verse 19. I didn't go ahead to verse 19. Yes, I did. 19.
So you're only doing what you see God doing.
Say that again.
You're only doing what you see God.
What did Jesus say he did?
He only did what he sees his dad doing.
He said, I'm doing what God does. I'm only doing what God does. Right? He's following God's example. Do you suppose that in return he wants us then to follow his example? I mean, obviously, that's really kind of what the term Christian is about. It means that we're going to be like Christ. That's what that means, literally. That's what it means. How do we know what the right thing is to do and when? It's in there. How do we know that? Verse 19 to 20. For the Father Miss Julie can't answer. Someone else got to answer. How do we know the right thing to do and when to do it? Verse 20. Verse 20.
He shows us what he's done,
Yeah.
what he's doing.
God shows us. He shows us. We see what God's done, then he shows us what we should do. Not trick questions, right guys? No trick questions here. He is just demonstrating for us. And how do we know when? Well, he's going to show us the right time and the right thing. That's when the Holy Spirit speaks to your heart or prompts you, or you see something and you think, you know what, maybe I should be doing something about that. And so that's God speaking to us, telling us. So it doesn't matter whether it's Monday or Wednesday or Sunday when God shows you those things. It doesn't matter, because whenever God says act, do the work for my kingdom, that's when you do it. And it doesn't matter what day of the week it is, what hour of the day it is. When God says, do it, that's when you do it. And you're gonna, and I know you may find it hard to believe, and maybe you've never experienced it, but there are times when you will know with absolute certainty that's what I'm supposed to do. I know it, and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do it. Sometimes you might not even think about it. You just know it's the thing, and you just act, and you don't even realize that what happened until after you did it. What kind, and here's the best part, the biggest part, and the most, I think, amazing part in all of this. And it's in the latter half of verse 20, I'm telling you now. What kind of potential do we have when we take Jesus' lead, or his example, in this way? What kind of potential do we have when we follow Christ's example in this way?
Even greater works.
Can do even greater works. Now, you look at all the things that Jesus did. He did some incredibly shocking things. You think about feeding the 5,000. You think about him walking on water. You think about him raising the dead. You get all kinds of unbelievable things, right? But he himself says, I can go on and do even greater things because I'm following the Father's example. Because I'm seeing what God is showing me to do, and I'm doing it. And the same is true for us. We can do very great things when we are obedient and when we follow God's example. And it can be things that you never imagined that you would be able to do or accomplish. You may find yourself in places that you never thought that you would wind up being in a good way. You may find yourself being able to accomplish some goal or task that you never even imagined you would need to try to accomplish. It's just a matter of being willing and being obedient when God says, go do that thing. And it can start in the smallest way. Just like it happened for Jesus here. He stops to talk to this guy, right? All he does is stop to talk to the guy. And he winds up healing him, right? Because all he did was stop to talk to the guy. And that's the way it can work for us on a lot of occasions. Because we just knew it was time to stop and talk to the guy. So, in the doing, the talking, you realize that there's something else that you can do for this person too. And that's often, not always, but it's often the way it can happen for us. So let's be honest, work is work. You gotta do something. And Jesus said it best when he said, my Father is always working. Right? Always working. So, but work does never end. It's the truth. But the fact of the matter is, that doesn't mean it's horrible work. When we're doing the right kind of work, it's not a burden. It may be a challenge. We may have to, knuckle down and give it some real elbow grease. But in the end, it's not a burden that you don't want to take on. You find yourself in the midst of doing the work and you think, I want to do more of this, even though it's challenging, even though it might be difficult, even though I may have things that I'm putting at risk by doing this. I'm willing to do it because it's right. I know this is right, and this is what I need to do. You can look back later and you can think, there is no way that I did that. I cannot believe I actually did that. I can't believe that's where I ended up. I can't believe that God took me to that place. It can be astonishing what God can do for us and what God will do through us. Some incredible things. Not because you're so great, not because I'm such a great person, although I am pretty great. I'm pretty great. Well, maybe not. But it's because we choose to do something simple, which is obey. Simply to obey and to follow Jesus' example and to do a work in the life of someone else when God says, do that. Go. Be a part of that. Take that job on. And we know that God has said to do it, and then we do it. Sometimes you don't get the whole picture of what he's asking you to do. Trust me, I've been there more times than I care to remember. But in the end, you know that God has asked that and you are very grateful and thankful for it. So, it's Lenten season, right? And we talk a lot about giving things up for Lent. But sometimes, the right thing to do is not to give something up. Sometimes the right thing to do is to take something on, to do something that you wouldn't have done otherwise, to do work. So I don't know while the rest of this Lenten season happens, because we're only a couple more weeks and Easter's here. Maybe there is something that God wants you to do, something to accomplish, a person to talk to, something that you should be doing. Pray about that. And ask God, what is it that I should be working hard at now? I know that maybe it's going to be a Sunday, maybe it's going to be a Friday or a Saturday afternoon or whatever it is. It doesn't matter what it is. God wants us to be hard at work. Now, let me say finally, and get back to Miss Erica and all those other people who have to work on Sundays. We do live in a culture where people are not observing the Sabbath. They don't have the respect for the gospel, they don't have the respect for their creator. And that's unfortunate. And it puts a lot of people who are believers in positions that they would prefer not to be in. My advice in that situation is, when it is possible, always do your best to be able to observe the Sabbath, but particularly in areas of critical roles in our society, like police officers, nurses, doctors, firemen, women, people, whoever. Particularly in those roles, it's just a reality that we need people who are serving in those roles to serve other people. And I definitely believe that God does not judge against those individuals at all. Now, if we are taking on work on the Sabbath, and you don't really have to, then maybe you should be asking yourself about that. Because if you're just doing it just to make some more money, then our motives probably need to be questioned pretty hard. Because if we don't have to put the pocketbook first, it should really be God there in the front. I said, God bless those who are required and have to do those works of service on a Sunday. And God bless them and be with them, and hope that the Spirit will minister to you through those times. But if you don't have to be there on a Sunday, you better not. Because that's really what that whole thing is about. Because clearly, as Ms. Hannah observed earlier, I work on Sundays. Pastor Rick works on Sundays. Priests and pastors around the world work on Sunday. But that's one of the things that God has asked those people to do, who serve in those places, to do a work where others have been instructed to rest. He has instructed those people to do the work of ministry. So, and that is, of course, in following Christ's example. So, the Sabbath, it can be a tricky question for us, particularly in a culture where people don't respect God. But doing the work of the kingdom is a whole lot different than doing the work for myself to benefit me rather than God and his kingdom. Okay, thanks for letting me blabber on. Let's have a prayer and we'll be done. Father, thanks for your time together tonight. You bless us with strength and talents and abilities. And I pray, Lord, that you also bless us with a spirit of obedience to you, so that when we see that there is a work that you want for us to do, we're willing to step out, sometimes to take big risks, to do the work of your kingdom, to minister into the lives of other people. And you want all of us to participate in those kinds of things. You showed us the greatest example in the way that you performed works of ministry, even on the Sabbath. So let us be followers to take on that example. And in taking on the example and in being obedient, Father, I know you can use each one of us in incredible ways to accomplish stuff that we never believed to be possible. Thank you, Lord, for everything that you do, and I pray that you'll continue to guide us and watch over all of our friends that aren't with us this evening. We thank you and ask it in your name. Amen.